Hey, this is Antonio. Welcome back to my channel. Now let's have some fighting words. So in this video, I want to talk about Mario Barrios. And my question is, what happens if he wins? What then? What happens next? So I've been thinking a lot about this because Keith Thurman continues to talk about what's happening next and what he's going to do next and who he's going to fight next. And he's going to have such, a busy year this year. But I'm like, you still have somebody who's like 7 years younger than you, somebody who's a very aggressive fighter, somebody who was once a champion, somebody who is actually bigger than you that you have to face. And you continue to talk about everything else in your life, about how you're going to go to Disneyland and about how you're going to fight Errol Spence and about how you're going to be the king of the welterweight division. And yet, I feel like you keep overlooking Barrios. But on top of that, after watching the press conference, I kind of felt like the whole gear was made for Keith Thurman to say, hey, I'm back. Now, we all know Keith Thurman can talk. We all know he speaks really well when he has a microphone in front of him. And Barrios is not the most outgoing, okay? And especially if you put a microphone in front of him, you're not going to get a whole lot. You'll get the answer to your question, but you're not going to get anything bubbly. You're not going to get anything remotely entertaining. But I felt like the press conference was mostly geared toward Keith Thurman. It was mostly geared toward what are your thoughts and what are your plans in the welterweight division and what are you planning on doing? How do you plan on coming back and being the one time all over again? And it's just like, oh yeah, by the way, Barrios was over there. So it just feels like there's a gear and a push for Keith to do his one time thing. And it's just like Barrios is a live dog. The same way Keith Thurman is a live dog because he's coming off of a loss is the same way that Mario Barrios is a live dog because he's coming off of a loss. He's a live dog. The only difference is, I don't know, I feel like, and I'm not saying that Tank would not have beaten Barrios if he didn't look depleted, but let's be honest, if you looked at Barrios' face, in the weigh-in or whatever, and his fight against Gervonta Tank Davis, he was a skeleton, literally a skeleton. You look at him now, and he's sizing up with Keith Thurman, and it's just like, he looks good at this weight. He looks like this is where he belongs. Just physically, he looks like this is where he belongs. Doesn't look like a skeleton. He doesn't look weak. He doesn't look depleted. He looks comfortable. He looks like he is comfortable at this weight. I already knew he was taller than Keith Thurman. What I didn't realize was his size and how they would physically match up. And even Keith Thurman said, in the last press conference, he's a little bigger than what I thought. It's good to see him face to face. He looks good at the weight. He looks very comfortable at this weight. And some of the things that Keith said was, I'm going to be moving more. I'm going to be throwing more punches. And I've been looking at a lot of Barrios, fights, and honestly, he's a really great counterpuncher. I don't know if I said that in my last breakdown for him, but he's a really good counterpuncher. And I mean, not just in the pocket counterpunching, because the way Barrios fights, he only gets recognized as being some tough Mexican warrior. But no, I mean, he can back up and counterpunch. Continuously backing up. I'm not saying it's the most fluid, but he can continuously back up and jab. That's pretty impressive. So it's just like, okay, Keith, you keep saying you're going to be one time. That's fine. But just know that you're in there with somebody who's a really great counterpuncher. So you be one time all you want. And I'm not saying Keith will not be one time. I'm actually expecting him to be one time. Because I just felt like this whole time, I felt like they just needed somebody for Keith to go in there and look great against. And who better? Barrios is coming up. Barrios was once a champion. Barrios only has one loss. Barrios is bigger than him. Barrios is younger than him. So if you look at it, you're going to be like, oh, he's young and he's big. Yeah, they both have a loss, but he's young and he's big. It's just like, okay. Also, when you look at their styles, yes, Barrios is aggressive. Yes, he is aggressive. Let's call it what it is. He's aggressive. But he's controlled aggression. There's a difference. I'm not talking about Maidana where he just literally, he turns into the tornado. I'm talking about and in no way am I saying he is like Camacho. But he has an aggression that he controls. He's thinking about those punches. He can stop those punches in mid-punch. That's what I'm talking about when I say controlled punches. Barrios is no walk in the park. And I feel like a lot of people, for the first time seeing him, they saw him against Tank. And their impression of him is like, I can take it, I can leave it. But he's not that type of fighter. He's not that type of fighter. He's a very intelligent fighter. And I feel like Keith Thurman, styles make fights. I feel like Keith Thurman's style will bring out the best in Barrios. He won't be depleted. He won't be weak. You know, like I said, the weight matters a whole lot, because if you're not comfortable, if you're uncomfortable, and you're hungry and you're weak and you're sluggish and you're a little bit slow, that's going to show up in your performance. But if you are comfortable, if you are well fed, even though they'll be cutting weight and all that, but like if you're just in a better place, and in a better place mentally, because you don't have to go through what I've always felt was the most grueling part, was doing a weigh-in, personally. Like, it was just never fun for me. I hold water, so it just wasn't fun for me. But, I mean, it's going to be interesting. It's definitely going to be interesting. And another thing that I also thought, like I said, I was just sitting back just kind of thinking and looking at their last and final press conference. But it's just like, okay, what happens if Barrios wins? So what does that mean? Because Keith has been saying the entire time what he's going to do next. So it's just like, well, if Barrios stops you, which is a real possibility, contrary to what everybody thinks, it is a real possibility. If Barrios stops you, well then what happens next? Because we're banking on Keith fighting the winner of Ugas and Spence. But if Barrios stops him, what happens next? Then I was thinking, well, does that mean that we have to reopen conversation for a possible Spence or Ugas fighting Bud? Because are they really going to give Mario Barrios a title shot with the winner of Ugas and Spence? I highly doubt that. The only way, in any way, shape, and form that would happen is if Mario Barrios, destroys, and I mean destroys, Keith Thurman. I'm talking about like a Deontay Wilder versus Spielka knockout, where, Keith is getting carried out of the ring on a stretcher. All right, that's the only way that's happening. And his stock will rise, because a lot of people are going to watch this fight, because a lot of people want to see Keith Thurman come back, because a lot of people still want to see what would have happened if Keith Thurman would have fought Errol Spence. Well, Keith Thurman claims he's back in the mix, and he's going to do this, and he's going to be one time tonight. He's going to knock out Barrios, and he's going to take his way on up, and he's going to take on the winner of Ugas or Spence. That's what everybody's banking on. Spence and Thurman. But you would think that, by now we know that this is boxing and anything can happen at any given time. And the guy you least expect could come out the winner. Ask Ugas. Everybody thought Pacquiao was going to wash him. Wrong. So simple as that. You can't bank on those things. And you definitely can't project that far into the future, which Keith Thurman is doing, which could be a detriment to him. And I'll tell you why. Because you can't tell me you're that focused on Barrios when you continuously are talking about Ugas and Spence in every interview. Yes, I know they're in the back of your mind because they have belts and they're unifying. Yes, they're in the back of your mind, but let them be in the back of your mind come Sunday morning. After the fight, do not let them be in your mind right now during your training camp for Barrios. Barrios is young, Barrios is big, Barrios is strong. Barrios is a gritty fighter. He's a gritty fighter, and he's not, like I said, I think a lot of people just look at Barrios like, oh, he's just rough and tough, and he's just going to bang it out. Like, he's rough and tough, and that's true. He is going to bang it out, but he's not a dumb fighter. He's not just somebody who just throws his fist. He's a very controlled fighter, and I think Keith Thurman is thinking about, I'm not saying he's looking at Barrios and saying, oh, he's just another Sean Porter. He's just a rough, tough guy who's just going to, bring it. But like, all I got to do is be the matador with this bull. That's it. And I'm like, no. You got something else coming. I don't know. I don't know if it has to, listen, like I said, Barrios wins. Do they have to call Bud Crawford? It's like, listen, I know we said we wouldn't go across the street, but you know what? We got a crossing guard. Come on over, because we don't know what to do. If this fight goes the distance and it's a unanimous decision, I'm pretty sure they're not going to allow Barrios to go on up and face the winner of Ugas and Spence, right? So it's just like, what's going to happen? And then I also thought, because the whole time for me, I just kind of felt like they were kind of feeding Barrios to Thurman. So I don't know, maybe out him and it'd be like, you just messed up our future plans. I'm going to make sure you fight Jaron Ennis. Like, you're going to have to deal with Ennis. Just Ennis will straighten you out for me. I don't know what's going to happen. But I got to tell you, during this whole promotion, during this whole thing with Thurman and Barrios, I just feel like they've been overlooking Barrios. And I'm like, yeah, I get it. He's not that great on the mic, and there's nothing convincing about his speech about what he's going to do. His demeanor, nothing,